The 2025 coaching carousel is now in full swing, and while there haven't been as many crazy moves as we've seen in the last couple of years, there have still been a couple of moving pieces, and some coaches who ultimately failed the last couple of years, more specifically in 2024. Today, I want to spotlight 6 coaches who so far have gotten fired, talk about who they were, and why they ended up getting let go of at their school. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you want to support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about 6 coaches who failed in 2024. Okay, actually I take that back. We're going to go ahead and do 7 coaches, and the first one we're going to start with is Florida Atlantic head coach Tom Herman. You guys probably remember that name. Herman was a huge deal at one point in the coaching world, as he got his coaching start at Texas Lutheran, but quickly rose up the coaching ladder, and from 2012 to 2014 was the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach for Ohio State once they won the national championship. He had an extremely successful stint while he was at Houston, and actually beat 2 top 5 teams while he was there. After that, he became the head man at Texas, but unfortunately in his time with the Longhorns he was not able to make it. After that, he'd end up getting one more opportunity in the coaching world. Flash forward all the way to 2022, Herman would get his next opportunity to be a head coach, and that would come at Florida Atlantic. Sadly, in these 2 years at the Owls, they ended up going 6-16 and were so far 0-6 in the American Athletic Conference. They also fired him after a 5-game losing streak, and to many this was a surprise. FAU is by no means some sort of juggernaut, and Herman was only in his 2nd year. You sort of needed to give him time, but I guess they just saw the writing on the wall and said it's time to move forward. Sadly, at one point Tom Herman was the next big thing, and now it looks like he's going to flame out and probably settle into a coordinator role at some sort of other Power 4 school. It is sad though for Tom Herman. Okay, so the next coach we're going to talk about is Mike McIntyre. You guys probably all remember him, as at one point he was the head man at Colorado and led them to a breakout season in 2016. Sadly, after starting out strong in 17 and 18, McIntyre would end up flaming out and would get fired at Colorado. Flash forward a couple of years later, and McIntyre was the head man at Florida International. That is one of the toughest places in the world to win, and sadly the Panthers never made any sort of strides while he was there. They went 6-18 in the Conference USA, and were 3-5 this past season. What's interesting is he actually had a couple of decent players, as Keon Jenkins was a really good quarterback, and wide receiver Eric Rivers will probably be one of the top receivers in the portal. McIntyre could just never really get anything going while he was there, but at the same time, who really can? It's one of the most impossible places to win, and it looks like the Panthers are going to go through another head coach, and it'll probably be rinse and repeat, unless they have some pit bull magic. Okay, the next coach we're going to talk about is Appalachian State head man Sean Clark. I was honestly kind of surprised that Clark got fired, as it looked like he was the next big thing after both Scott Satterfield and Elijah Drinkwitz made their way up to the Power 4. This was App State's first losing season since 2013, and technically there's an asterisk on that because they only went 5-6, and one of their games was canceled. They could have easily made a bowl game and gotten to 6-6. In total, Clark went 40-24 in his 5 seasons with the Mountaineers, and there's a $500,000 buyout. One thing that you can say though is that the team started to regress. The teams went 19-7 over the first 2 years, probably with Elijah and Satterfield's players, and ever since then, the only really relevant thing that App State has done is beat Texas A&M back in 2022. Sadly, he's been falling off ever since, but still, he was a winning coach and had a really good culture at App State. The Mountaineers need to make a good hire if they want to keep their level of relevancy, but it still does surprise me that they let Sean Clark go, and hopefully it doesn't end up biting them. Honestly, the Ryan Walters era at Purdue is sad, and I really felt bad for the guy. After blowing up as a defensive coordinator at Mizzou, he ended up jumping over to Illinois under Brett Bielema's staff and helped the Illini have one of the best defenses in college football in 2022. Because of that and his ability to recruit, Walters was named the head coach to be the next big thing at Purdue. He was supposed to follow in the line of Jeff Brom and keep the Boilermakers relevant, while either recruiting more or at the same level as Brom did. Sadly though, Walters would lose his first game at home to Fresno State, and it never really got a whole lot better since then. The team ended up doing terrible in year 1, but year 2 was even worse. They beat FCS level Indiana State, who is from 45 minutes away, and then they also ended up losing 11 straight games, 2 of which were some of the worst losses in school history. They got absolutely destroyed by Notre Dame at home, and finished their year with a 66-0 thrashing by their arch rival Indiana. Walters could not figure out the quarterback situation, he couldn't recruit, the defense wasn't good, they were getting blown out, and they had lost support of the fans and the administration. Walters, unfortunately, was just in over his head while he was at Purdue. I don't necessarily think he was a bad guy or a bad coach. He just was never really meant for that. I never thought it was a good hire for Purdue, and to me, he should have been a head man at a MAC school before jumping to Purdue, which is very hard to win at. I first started watching college football back in 2013, and that's when I first heard about this guy named Gus Malzahn. He turned Auburn football around in just 1 year and had them in the national championship. From there, Malzahn was a steady dude while he was at Auburn, but unfortunately he could just never get over the hump, and eventually he ended up taking the head coaching job at UCF. UCF found their way into the Big 12, and many thought that Malzahn could build the Knights into something special, including myself on this channel. Sadly though, things have fallen apart for UCF, as last year was a struggle and this year was even worse. Last year they went 6-7, and this year they went 4-8, as they butchered the quarterback position as KJ Jefferson was terrible, and outside of RJ Harvey, there really wasn't much of a reason to watch the Knights. It looked like Malzahn's recruiting was going down, he just couldn't seem to win, and the overall trajectory was just not great for him. He then announced that he'd be heading over to Florida State, and many are now wondering how the heck that happened. Was he talking to Florida State a couple weeks beforehand? I don't know. Either way, it looks like the two are mutually agreeing to part ways, and while Malzahn on paper looked great, I did have my skepticism that it would truly work out in the long run for the Knights. Now I do wonder who UCF will hire though. A few days after saying that he was not planning on retiring anytime soon, North Carolina decided to move forward last week with firing Mack Brown. We all know Mack Brown as the legendary head coach at Texas, but many forget he was at UNC before and came back at the end of the decade to turn the Tar Heels around. He'll be known for having good running back and quarterback play, including sending two guys off to the NFL in Sam Howell and Drake May, and sadly the quarterback position is a big reason why things have fallen apart here. They completely butchered that in 2024, as neither Max Brown, Jacoby Criswell, or Connor Harrell really worked out. Recruiting was falling apart, he was getting older, and UNC was losing its luster. While he did take them to the ACC Championship game in 2022, he just didn't get the results that UNC was really looking for, and I think they were just ready to move on from him, and there was no hard feelings. Mack Brown ranks 8th all-time amongst FBS coaches with 288 victories, and he's the only coach with 100-plus wins at multiple schools. He had 113 at UNC and 158 at Texas. There are now only 2 active head coaches in the FBS with national championships, and it's sad to see Mack Brown go, but he definitely was losing it a little bit by the end of it. Okay, so the last coach that I want to touch on today is Neil Brown. A couple years ago, I remember when Neil Brown led Troy to an upset victory over LSU. That felt like forever ago, but after that, he took the head coaching job at West Virginia. He was kind of seen as one of the next big things in college football, but sadly, he could just never really figure it out while he was in Morgantown. He was the coach after Dana Holgorsen, and he was fired after going 6-6 this year. That was Neil Brown's problem. He was just average. Overall, in his tenure, he went 37-35, and just never really had a great season. You knew exactly what you were going to get with West Virginia each and every year, as you were going to get an average quarterback, a decent running back, a couple of other cool weapons, and then you'd probably win 6 or 7 or 5 games. He was obviously a great person, but he really lost a lot of his luster, momentum, and support about 2 years ago, and it was just a matter of time before Neil Brown was kicked out of Morgantown. West Virginia is a pretty prestigious program, and all that mediocrity was just not going to work for that much longer. Again, it seemed like he was a great guy, but he's just an average coach. An average is no longer going to buy you time in college football. He never showed he could take his team to the next level. He never showed he could build a program to championship caliber. And even though they had a lot of good weapons this year, they ended up butchering what was supposed to be a promising season. We'll have to wait and see what he does next though, and I am curious to see who West Virginia gets as their new head man. So yeah, today we talked about 7 coaches who ended up getting fired this season and failed at their tenures, and what do you guys think? Why did these guys get fired? What was the main thing that got them canned? And who will be the next head coach at the schools that they were fired from? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.